Some people move through the world quietly, but nothing gets past them. They don't react on impulse. They don't chase validation. They don't explain themselves twice. And it's not because they're cold, it's because they've learned exactly how manipulation works and how to stay untouched by it. In this video, you're going to discover the 7 silent behaviors that make certain people impossible to influence, control, or emotionally push. Not the loud behaviors, not the dramatic ones, the ones rooted in psychology, the ones shaped by childhood patterns, nervous system survival, and emotional intelligence. By the end of this, you'll see why some people can sense tension before it appears, why they stay grounded when others try to pull them into chaos, and why manipulation collapses the moment you stop reacting the way manipulators expect. This isn't just a list, it's a mirror. A quiet look into the behaviors you've developed, the ones you're learning, or the ones you still need to reclaim. Some people don't enter conversations, they enter observations. They take in the room before they take in the words. They watch how someone breathes before speaking. They notice the hesitation hidden inside a "no, it's fine." They pick up on the tone you didn't mean to reveal. While most people rush to respond, they let silence stretch. And in that silence, things become obvious. Intention, tension, motive. This isn't detachment, it's emotional awareness shaped by experience. People who are hard to manipulate rarely grew up in predictable environments. They learned early that a raised eyebrow, a sudden pause, or a shift in volume tells you far more than a sentence ever could. So now they don't react first, they gather information. Psychology calls it cognitive attunement, the ability to read patterns instead of promises, to catch inconsistencies before they turn into problems, to see what a person is trying to hide by noticing what they didn't say. Manipulators thrive on immediate reactions, guilt, panic, defensiveness. But these individuals do something different. They wait. They let the other person reveal themselves. They allow the emotional dust to settle before deciding what anything means. Their silence is not passive, it's strategic. It gives them clarity while others expose their intentions. This is the first silent behavior of people you can't manipulate. They observe everything and reveal almost nothing. People who are hard to manipulate share a subtle but powerful trait. They speak clearly and they speak once. They don't dress their words in nervous explanations. They don't repeat themselves to make someone else comfortable. They don't add emotional cushioning just to avoid conflict. It's not arrogance, it's emotional clarity. When they share a boundary, a need, or a truth, they aren't waiting for you to approve it. They're simply stating it. This confidence comes from having an internal compass that doesn't spin. They know what they mean. They know what they choose. And they don't adjust those choices just to keep the peace. Over-explaining is a habit people learn in environments where they had to defend everything, their tone, their choices, their reactions, even their intentions. So when someone finally becomes emotionally grounded, they stop performing. They stop editing themselves mid-sentence. They stop offering unnecessary details to prove they're not the problem. Here's what this does. It gives manipulators nothing to work with. When you speak once, you leave no cracks for guilt, pressure, or distortion. When you don't panic to justify yourself, the power dynamic shifts instantly. Emotionally strong people don't raise their voice. Their clarity raises their boundaries. They trust their words enough to let silence hold the rest. This is the second silent behavior of those you can't manipulate. They communicate with certainty, not apology. People who can't be manipulated have mastered something most adults never learn. They regulate before they react. They don't fire back impulsively. They don't get swept into someone else's urgency. They don't let emotion push them into saying things they'll later regret. When pressure rises, they pause. Just a breath, just a moment, but that moment changes everything. They name what they feel instead of becoming what they feel. I'm irritated. I'm uncomfortable. This doesn't sit right. Instead of, I'm under attack. That tiny separation between emotion and identity is psychological armor. Manipulators depend on emotional shortcuts, anger that comes too quickly, guilt that appears on cue, fear that makes you fold. They press those buttons because most people react instantly, but the regulated person doesn't. They slow the scene down. They create space where pressure was supposed to overwhelm them. They choose their response with intention instead of reflex. And when someone cannot provoke you, they cannot control you. Calmness isn't passivity, it's discipline. The ability to stay rooted in yourself, even when someone is trying to pull you out of your center. Their stillness is not silence, it's strategy. This is the third silent behavior of people you can't manipulate. They pause long enough to stay in control of themselves, and that alone keeps others from controlling them. Emotionally strong people don't chase connections, they choose them. They don't beg for closeness. They don't fight for someone's inconsistent attention. They don't rearrange their entire identity to keep a relationship alive. If someone pulls away, they don't panic. They pause. They observe the pattern. They ask themselves the questions most people are too afraid to ask. Is this healthy for me? Is this consistent? Is this connection mutual? Or am I carrying it alone? This mindset comes from something deeper than confidence. It comes from secure self-worth, the understanding that losing someone is not the same as losing yourself. People who can't be manipulated know a simple truth. The moment you start chasing someone, you hand them control of your emotional direction. And manipulators rely on exactly that. Your fear of abandonment, your need for reassurance, your hope that things will go back to how they used to be. But emotionally grounded people don't play that game. They don't run after mixed signals or explanations wrapped in excuses. They don't try to convince anyone to stay. If the energy shifts, they step back, not to punish, not to control, but to protect their peace. Their distance isn't rejection, it's discernment. This is why they cannot be manipulated. There's no leverage in trying to control someone. Who knows they will be okay without you? This is the fourth silent behavior of people you can't manipulate. They don't chase, they choose, and that alone keeps their power intact. People who are hard to manipulate don't get distracted by words. They study patterns. Anyone can apologize. Anyone can make promises. Anyone can act right when they want something. But behavior always tells the truth. Emotionally strong people pay attention to what someone does. When they're embarrassed, when they're corrected, when they're told no, when they don't get their way. These moments reveal a person's emotional maturity far more clearly than any speech. They also understand something many people overlook. Manipulators rarely change their strategy. They just rotate it. A little guilt here, a little affection there, a sudden burst of kindness right after a moment of disrespect. It creates confusion, a psychological trap known as intermittent reinforcement. Most people fall for it because their mind holds on to the good moments and excuses everything else. But emotionally grounded individuals compare the intensity of the apology to the consistency of the pattern. If the effort is temporary, if the change disappears after the emotion fades, if the promise only appears after being caught, they recognize it for what it is, a tactic, not transformation. So they don't get swept into the cycle. They don't justify, minimize, or rewrite the situation. They observe the pattern like detached, neutral, factual, undeniable. This makes them impossible to manipulate because they don't make decisions based on emotional highs. They make decisions based on behavioral evidence. This is the fifth silent behavior of people you can't manipulate. They trust patterns over promises, and that clarity protects them from emotional traps. People who can't be manipulated protect their mental energy the way others protect their time, deliberately, consistently, without guilt. They don't wait until they're drained to set boundaries. They notice the early signs, the conversation that feels heavier than it should, the friend who only calls when there's a crisis, the subtle tension after every interaction with someone who means well. Most people push through these signals. They tell themselves they're being dramatic or too sensitive. But emotionally grounded individuals treat these signals as information. They know when something is nourishing them and when something is slowly wearing them down, so they respond early. They step back before resentment forms. They say no before their peace is compromised. They walk away before the situation becomes a cycle. This isn't selfishness. This is emotional hygiene. The internal practice of keeping your mind uncluttered and your heart unpolluted. And here is what makes them especially hard to manipulate. They don't feel guilty for choosing themselves. Manipulators thrive on draining people who feel obligated, responsible, afraid to disappoint, afraid to withdraw support. But these individuals refuse to be emotionally used. They give without being emptied, help without being hijacked, care without being controlled. Their presence is intentional, and so is their distance. The truth is simple. You cannot manipulate someone who is willing to walk away the moment their peace is at stake. This is the sixth silent behavior of people you can't manipulate. They guard their energy like a boundary, not a suggestion. And that boundary cannot be breached by pressure or guilt. People who can't be manipulated understand the power of silence, not as a weapon, but as a diagnostic tool. When something feels off, they don't argue, they don't raise their voice, they don't chase explanations or prove their innocence. They go quiet, not to punish, not to control, but to see. Silence shows them everything words try to hide. Who respects the pause? Who becomes defensive? Who grows angry when their usual tactics stop working? Who reveals their true intentions when attention is no longer guaranteed? Silence clears the emotional fog. It reduces noise, urgency, and manipulation attempts. It creates distance, and distance reveals patterns that closeness made blurry. Emotionally grounded individuals use this space to examine the relationship without pressure. They watch how someone behaves when the game of emotional tug-of-war no longer works. They let the behavior speak, and it always does. They aren't withdrawing, they're evaluating. They're stepping back to see the full picture. And manipulators hate silence, because silence takes away the one thing they rely on, your reaction. This is the seventh silent behavior of people you can't manipulate. They use stillness to reveal truth. And once they see the truth, they don't unsee it. True emotional strength isn't loud, it's steady. It's the ability to stay rooted in yourself even when someone tries to pull you off balance. People who can't be manipulated aren't cold or distant, they're clear. They know their patterns, guard their energy, and respond with intention instead of impulse. And the moment you begin doing the same, manipulation loses its power over you. Because real control doesn't come from dominating anyone else. It comes from knowing no one can dominate you.